strangers. I always say hi, strangers.
Fine, just say hi, strangers.
Hi, strangers. My husband wants me to be concise, so I am Mandy from Lady and Pops, and I'm at Food 52, and I'm bringing you a recipe, a savory donut recipe. I would recommend using a stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can use a handheld mixer. That's fine. But the texture of this dough is almost in between dough and a batter. Okay, it's a very, very loose, sticky, almost battery dough. Okay, so but even so, this may not be familiar with some people, but we're gonna actually need this batter because we actually need that gluten formation as well. So in here I have 50% bread flour and then 50% tapioca flour. Okay, so the kneading is for the bread flour, obviously, because tapioca is gluten-free. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of light brown sugar. 1 teaspoon of instant dry yeast. I always use instant. I don't know how other yeast work. Half a teaspoon of sea salt. Try not to like dump the salt right on top of the yeast because supposedly it kills it. And then water. I'm gonna be adding 1 cup plus 1 tablespoon, which is 255 grams. And I'm going to use a paddle attachment instead of a dough hook. Go slowly at first. And then I'm going to just give it a quick scraping. Okay. And then I'm going to turn it to like a medium-high speed. And this is basically gonna create a lot of gluten with the bread flour. So I'm just gonna let this go for about 5 minutes, okay? Cut. Okay, so I wanna show you what the right consistency is. I actually ended up adding 1 more tablespoon of bread flour. So actually in the beginning, instead of 1 cup plus 1 tablespoon of water, I think I just needed 1 cup, which I will specify in the recipe. But go with the consistency, okay? Because every flour is kind of different. So the consistency you want is this. Like when you lift the, you see like the dough or batter is like, it forms this like line and then it slowly breaks instead of like dripping like water, okay? I don't know if you can see this clearly.
It's like a goo.
Yeah, it's like a goo. Like it should like carry it up for just a few seconds and then it'll drop down. The one last step is that we're actually going to add baking powder, okay? Because like I said, this is kind of in between mochi and bread. We have the yeast and we also have the baking powder to give it that extra lift. But I didn't want to add the baking powder right in the beginning because I feel like that's going to be activated prematurely. So I always do it at the end. So I'm going to be adding 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and I'm just going to mix it in until it's even. There. So I'm just gonna give it one last mixing just to make sure everything is, the baking powder is evenly mixed in. So you can see this consistency here, right? It's kind of like battery, but then it's actually kind of dough-like as well. As long as it's not dripping, it's fine, okay? So I want you to rest this for maybe about an hour. Until it, I would say like a little bit more than double. So let's say like, you know, until it becomes like 250% of its original size, okay? Here I have a potato, a medium-sized potato. that I've already cooked in the microwave because I was too lazy to boil water. So basically you can use any type of potato, preferably like starchy type. This one is just slightly too waxy to my liking, but it's still gonna work, okay? So I'm using this like whisk, and I'm basically gonna just like mash it into like a chunky texture. I don't want it to be like completely smooth, but I do want it to become kind of a chunky mash. And here I have 200 grams of ground pork. I'm gonna use a food processor to finely chop the shallots and gingers and stuff because I am lazy. Finely minced. I minced it and didn't puree it because I think it's really nice to kind of bite into like a little bit of ginger or like a little bit of shallot, a little bit of garlic. It kind of, it gives, it kind of makes eating it more fun, you know? So that not every bite tastes exactly the same. But if you're like not a fan of like biting into a piece of ginger or anything, you can puree it or like you can grate it if you want to. I'm going to season it with 1 tablespoon of garam masala. So that's 3 teaspoons is 1 tablespoon, okay? So 1 tablespoon. Just make it a little bit more intense with a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, and then 1.5 teaspoon of ground turmeric for color, okay? If I have the choice, I would use fish sauce. You guys know me, I almost never use salt, but I just want to make this recipe simpler for you guys once in a while, so I'm gonna use salt. But if you have fish sauce, you know where my loyalty lies. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm also going to flavor this potato a little bit with a little bit of salt and a little bit of black pepper. Now this is seasoned and I'm gonna mix it in. I'm gonna use my hand because it's just the easiest. All you have to do is mix it in until everything is evenly combined, and then I'm gonna cook this. Right now, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of ghee. If you don't have ghee, which is basically just clarified butter, you can use just butter. And I'm heating this over medium-high heat, I would say, in a non-stick pot.
Say it again.
Non-stick. I'm gonna explain this. Why non-stick? I have reasoning. Okay, I have reasons behind my madness. Okay, I'm not deglazing this. This is not a stew or any kind or a roast. There's no deglazing going on. If I have all these brownings stuck on the sides of the pan, there's no way for me to release them, and those are yummy, yummy flavors. So with the non-stick pot, you're making sure all the brown stuff is like sticking to itself. You know what I mean? All the brown meats, the brown stuff remains on your food that you're gonna eat instead of on the sides of the pot. So right now I'm going to add my meat, and I'm just gonna use my spatula to break it up. So I'm gonna brown these pretty well, which means not too much stirring. Once I've broken it relatively down into small pieces, I create kind of like a little hole in the middle for the steam to escape, and I just leave it.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Once I think that the first side is starting to brown pretty well, I mash it even further, and then I just keep browning them. About 3 to 5 minutes, I say. The pork should have released a little bit of its own fat, okay? okay? And then you will have like these brown edges on all the bits and pieces. And then you're going to pour this into your potato. Make sure you get all that oil in there. You're gonna mash this together. The purpose of that potato, it kind of acts like a binder, okay? It's going to kind of bind all the brown meats together so that they're not like, you know, loose and like running here and there. The potato is hopefully, it's going to eventually be able to hold everything together that later on, you're going to thank it big time when it comes to frying. So there, you're gonna just like mash it so like later on, when this cools down, you know that you'll be able to squish like a solid chunk together in the palm of your hand, okay? Now, you can leave this, I'm gonna say in the fridge, okay? Just to make sure that it cools down, way down. Actually, you know what? I'm not even gonna plastic wrap it because I don't wanna create any steam or I don't want this to be like wet and stuff. I want it to be nice and dry. So, no wrap, right in the fridge. Here I have some herbs. I have sage and I have dill fronds. You don't have to use exactly these. If you have curry leaves, that would be great. If you have fennel frond, that would be great too. But these are going to actually go onto the surface of the donut to make them pretty, okay? So I've washed them in a bit of water. And then I'm gonna scatter it on my towel. And I'm gonna give it like a really good shake. Okay. So that they're nice and dry, okay? And I'm just gonna leave it in this towel until I need it. The dough, very obviously, has expanded enormously and you can see all these little tiny bubbles everywhere. So before frying, you're just going to kind of, you don't want to completely deflate it, but then you just like give it like a little bit stir here, okay? Come here, whatever pot you're using, make sure that you add enough oil so that it reaches like at least 1.5 inches deep. So it doesn't matter which pot. If you have a smaller pot, you're frying maybe only 2 or 3 at a time. If you have a bigger pot, you're frying more at a time. But whatever you do, 1.5 inch deep at least. And then here, those herbs, after I wash them, I toss them with a little bit of flour. So it's going to stick easier, much easier. And then you want your oil to go up to 350, about 350 Fahrenheit. If you don't have a thermometer, you don't actually need to be so super precise. What I usually do is I just stick a wooden chopstick into the oil, and if it bubbles around enthusiastically, that means it's ready, okay? I have my filling here. I'm gonna use my hand because it's just the easiest. And I'm going to like squeeze a ball of it, you know, in my hand. And I'm gonna roll it in a little bit of flour so it sticks onto the dough easier. Can you see? And I'm going to just basically like get it into the dough. Don't panic if it's not like in the center of things, or like, you know, if you have like, you know, a little bit of it exposed, it doesn't really matter that much, okay? And then I'm going to, whatever herb that you're using, I'm going to like stick a piece of it. And this is an ice cream scoop, you can see, sit on the surface. And I'm just gonna dump it in the oil. Okay, just like that. And then second one.
How big of a ball?
That's about 1 tablespoon, I think. This one is a little smaller, but you know, you can make it whatever size that you would like. You don't want like too much. The dough to the filling ratio, I would say, is about 1 to 1. Okay. And it goes. You're gonna flip it. Because they're so buoyant, you kind of have to like hold it in place a little bit. So once it's like golden brown, like this, you can take it out. It'll be great if you have like a little assembly team, like, you know, someone is frying and then the other person is like preparing and dropping the donuts for you, but you can handle this. I can handle this by myself, it's no problem.
Is that a hint for me?
No, I don't want you to do anything. It's a disaster waiting to happen. There. So I'm gonna show you one more batch. Push it in, scoop it out, stick a piece of herbs on it, and you drop it. Ta-da! Nice, airy, puffy, golden brown, chewy curry donuts. So for the dipping sauce, nothing to it. Greek yogurt, Dijon mustard, sugar, salt, black pepper. And if you want it spicy, which I absolutely do, chili powder. And you just mix it. The purpose of the sauce is to cut through the richness of the donuts. Which one do I use? Which one do I use? Okay, fine, I'll pick you. So that's what the donut looks like. Very airy. Feels light in your hand. I wish I know how to describe the texture of the dough to you. It really is something in between bread and mochi. And then of course the filling, the potato is like, it's very chunky mash, so it has tons of different textures throughout. You sometimes get a creamy bite, and then sometimes you get like a more solid nub. And then the ground pork, because we browned it so well, it's a very, very sturdy bite of like porkiness, okay? And sometimes you like get a little bit of hint of ginger if you bite into one. It's just like every bite is kind of has a little different surprise. So I hope you like it. Let me know in a comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye.